Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Our host brings you the leading minds in AI, sharing their story, their success, and their advice. Focusing on fast-tracking you to the top, AI in Action cuts through the hype to help you kickstart your data science career. To listen to the latest AI in Action podcast, head over to www.alldus.com/podcast or subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cybersecurity series of the AI in Action podcast. I am your host, John Petherbridge. Today's guest is Dr. Matt Lemon, the Chief Information Security Officer at Huawei Ireland. In this episode, Matt runs through his career and shares some insights on some of the challenges that Cisos face today.
So I'm Matt Lemon, the Ciso for Huawei Mobile Services. I've been working in cyber for around about 25 years. How I got into it is I was working in networking, actually a long time ago at this stage, and working for a company in Ireland for William Price Listers, and I started to build out a virtualized system, replacing all the on-prem pieces of tin that they had, and I got involved with the security of virtual firewalls and routing and switching and that kind of stuff. And I kind of found that more interesting and more exciting than the networking that I was doing. So I started to take online classes and classes in face-to-face, like CISP and all that kind of stuff, and gradually work myself towards a role where I was looking after the security of the network and rather than the actual network itself. Yeah.
So how much self-study and classes did it take? How long did it take to go from a network engineer to being very competent on the security side?
I would say, so I did CISP. I did a couple of other small courses. I went to, I joined ISACA, I joined OWASP, all of those kinds of organizations, and went to any of the seminars and briefings that they gave. I'd say over the period of about a year, I went from being a network engineer predominantly to being the security person within the organization. Obviously, it carried on from there. I went on and did a master's and PhD in security and forensics and that kind of stuff. But that's over a much greater period of time. But
yeah,
if you have a good understanding of networking and you have an interest in security, you're prepared to put the work in, the self-study, the financial commitment to the coursework. If you're lucky enough to be in an organization that will sponsor that, so much the better. But yeah, I reckon about a year to be competent.
It's a year. Yeah, a year is a very quick turnaround, especially for the CISSP. There's a lot of people that take a bit of time out to get that right. And I get that route into security through networking. It is quite a common path that people take. From your experience, is there any particular path that you feel kind of brings out the strongest type of security professional, or is it does it kind of vary on the type of role you want to slot yourself into?
I think both, to be honest. I think it does depend to some extent on the type of role. If you want to be a CISO, if that's your goal, then I think there's a slightly different route. You need to be more business oriented, because a lot of people will not understand that security now, as opposed to 20 years ago or even 10 years ago is a business thing now. It's not. It's more like HR or finance or marketing. It's a business function. My role is not to be the gatekeeper that I was 10 years or so ago, where people would come and say, "Can we do this?" You say, "No, can't do that because it's not secure." We're more of a business enabler. So as a result, we need to understand the business. We need to have representation at top level, which is, that's where the C and Ciso comes from. You're a C-level exec. Yeah. So, and if you don't have, if that's not the direction that you want to go, then I think the more technical role, if you want to be, a SOC manager or something like that, then it's a much more technical role. It's less business. It's still business driven, but it's not really a top level business role.
Yeah.
But I think the type of people I see a reasonable amount of coming through is people that would have had a fairly regimented background, so maybe ex-military, police forces in whatever country, and a lot of people from finance backgrounds, because they do have that to do a kind of SOC role, whether it's an analyst or the manager. You need to be very, very focused and very regimented in your approach to what you do. You need to be able to, I don't know whether this will come out right, but you need to be able to follow the rules and do A, B, and C before you get to Z.
I get you. Yeah, quite disciplined in the process. Kind of
yeah,
the process and go with it. Yeah.
Yeah, discipline is a big part of it. Yeah.
And so, at what stage in your career then did you decide you wanted to? Did this role of a CISO become your target or your goal?
Once I started getting more into security and more technical, it was probably, so I spent quite a few years at Fry's. I was probably partway through my role at Fry's that I realised that there was a role that was that would give me the opportunity to be part of the business. Also to keep because obviously I'm from a technical background and I would never want to lose that. But when I realised that there was a role that would give me both and was more senior, that's kind of when I realised that that was the route that I wanted to go down, to be able to make some kind of positive contribution to the business, to protect it. And also to have a team, at that time a very small team, but a team that was working with me for the same goal, to protect the organisation and its customers or clients.
Yeah, good stuff. There's just so many different defined career paths you can take in security, in the cybersecurity and the business risk space. That I'm always interested to see at what point do people decide that this is where they want to be and what the path looked like. So that's really good. I suppose as a CISO, you've been a CISO for a good while now, and you've worked in public sector, consulting, so obviously William Fry, legal firms, banking, now mobile. Like, was this a part of your master plan to work in all these different industries and variety of sectors, or did you simply go where the opportunities were?
A little bit of both. Early on, I went where the opportunities were, because as a new CISO, it's not as easy to get a role as it is when you've got 20 years or whatever. So early on, I just kind of went with the flow. Saw who was looking for security people, who was looking to hire heads of security or CISOs or whatever you want to call them at the time,
Yeah.
And then as I kind of got more experience and did more work, I was a bit more choosy in what I did. So I was more interested in the organization and what they were about, than just moving to the next role because it was, I don't know, 10 grand more of a salary or whatever. So yeah, early on, I just took whatever seemed like the next logical step, and then later on is when you get the chance to almost pick and choose the companies that you work for or work with. And I've been lucky that the companies that I've worked with have all been great companies. You know, they've all been high profile, and companies that have wanted to do security for the right reasons, because I have worked with in consulting, and worked with some clients that want to do security for almost for the marketing. So they want to be seen to be doing security, but not because they necessarily want to make sure that everything is secure. They just want maybe the ISO certificate or the CSA star certificate or whatever is the certificate they're after, just to put on their website, rather than for the right reasons.
Yeah, that kind of ties into as well why it is a business function. It is as important as your marketing, to have a business that is secure and certified. It generates trust from customers and then investors as well. So yeah, that does happen. I'd say that happens quite a bit. It's interesting when you say, like, when you're starting off, you kind of go with the flow with the different type of roles that come in, and now it's at a point when once you get a few credible, high profile businesses under your belt and on your resume, you ultimately you start to have a bit more of a choice. It's when looking at Cisos, it's kind of sometimes it could be a bit confusing, or not confusing, hard to see, like, outside of not hitting the headlines with a huge data breach, what is a quantifiable measure of, like, success for a Ciso to carry forward with, like, his or her next role?
Yeah, because I think to some extent, probably some of the best Cisos are the ones that you never hear about, because, you know, the companies that they're in don't get hit by whatever the vulnerabilities or the latest threats are. But I think it's very difficult to come up with one quantifiable measure. But I suppose I have this thing that I call the Ciso Big Five, which is 5 things that everything that the team does and that I do has to roll up into. And one of those is that we have 0 realized threats or vulnerabilities. You know, I mean, that's a bit optimistic, but you have to set the target somewhere. So the target for me is that we have 0 breaches, 0 events that cause a data loss. Outside of that, I think you're into business type of things. So you're talking about the contribution that security makes to the business, and by that I suppose I mean from a reputation point of view and going out and talk. So I go out and talk to customers and potential customers, both in role now in Huawei, especially in IBM a few years ago. I would have spent a lot of time talking to clients and reassuring them of what it was that we were doing from a security perspective, making sure that they were comfortable with what we were doing, and if they weren't, getting to the bottom of why not, and trying to alleviate their concerns and prove to them that what we are doing is effective, and is a benefit to not only our business, but would also be to them as well. It's partly like the supply chain management. So all companies have their own procurement channels, and part of our procurement is to do our due diligence on our suppliers. So they have to complete various or they have to pass through various gates before we will onboard them as a supplier. And one of those is that we have to be confident and assured of their security posture. So that if we're doing business with them, we don't want to be hit by something because they were, I don't say negligent, but lacking in some particular area. If you think back a few years to when Target got hit hugely, that was because of one of their air conditioning suppliers. We don't want to be in the same position.
Yeah, all that third-party risk, it's huge.
Yeah.
And you published an article like last year, I think, on the average tenure of a Ciso is 26 months. And it's definitely seems true from all the different people I've engaged with and that I've seen their profiles and stuff. Do you want to just tell us a little bit more about that and where the article came from?
Yeah, it's partly from experience and partly from research that I did when I was doing my PhD. It's an extremely stressful job being the Ciso, and that's not to say that other roles aren't equally stressful, but the team members that you have are also under increased stress, and I think part of that is because there is a lack of people, lack of skills out there to fill the roles. So everybody ends up working at 110, 120% of capacity. So CISOs, partly because there is a lack of skill as well, are also in demand. So it seems like an easy option when things are getting really stressful, or you are not getting the support from the senior management, that the grass is always greener on the other side. So people do move. Part of that, I think, also is the fact that there's a very poor work-life balance, especially in the situation that we are now, with everybody working from home. When you're a CISO or security manager or whatever, it's very easy when you get home after however many hours you've done. You come home, you switch your laptop on. Maybe you're going to have dinner, then you switch your laptop on, or the phone comes out and you're checking the emails, you're checking the IM messages, because otherwise you don't know what is going on unless somebody picks up the phone and actually rings you. So the number of hours that a typical CISO puts in is way above the number of hours that they're contracted for. I suppose the typical is what, 40, 45 hours or something, and you would put in quite a bit more than that. And even when I go on holiday, the company phone will come with me. I'll tell people that I'm not going to answer it, but if they ring, we'll answer it, because your neck to some extent is on the line if things go pear-shaped. So you want to make sure that even though you're away or off for a couple of days, that things in the office are still going okay. I suppose another point would be the understanding and the support from other executives and from other from the board and stuff like that. I'm lucky in the role that I'm in now, in that I report to the chief executive and I have his support and understanding, and also from the rest of the executive team. We're included in everything. That hasn't always been the case in other roles, and it's very discouraging and disheartening when you have gone into a role. Maybe in your previous role you were quite comfortable, but somebody's come after you fairly aggressively, and you've changed roles with lots of promises, but you don't get the support from the rest of the executive team or from the board, and you come in to do a particular job with lots of great ideas that you've built up over the last few years, and then you go asking for a budget to do whatever projects that you said you were going to do when you were interviewed or talking initially, and you have to fight for that budget. And ultimately, we don't go asking for this cash just for the fun of it. We're asking for this because it makes the business more secure, and that makes the business more sustainable, makes the business more profitable ultimately, and protects the data of our customers, our clients, our own data, and there is a perceived lack of support from the board, which I think also is a stressful thing.
That is a common. It is very common to hear that the kind of when candidates are applying for Ciso roles or they're interested in Ciso roles, or you're discussing those types of roles, the questions are, so who will I be reporting into? And that gives them an indicator if they're going to have money to play with, or if they're going to have to fight for everything, or it can be they've obviously been burned before, so they don't want to be put themselves in that position again. It's definitely a challenging role, but it's definitely something you can see why the reason why you want to get into being a Ciso, and why you took your career in that direction, because it can be such an influential role and really impact the business in such a positive way. If you were to, is there any kind of single challenge as a Ciso that you say is probably the greatest one faced?
I suppose in my career, the biggest challenge has been to get the reporting line as high up as possible. I know we were just talking about that, but I suppose if I were on the other side of the fence and interviewing for a Ciso, and they ask who am I going to be reporting to, if they're not happy at the level that they're reporting to and they're pushing for higher up, that would be an indicator to me that you've got somebody that is pretty keen to get the support of the top table, and also somebody that's worth hiring. But it is the most difficult. You see an awful lot of CISOs that report to CIOs or maybe to COOs, and I mean, it's a COO. I can understand, that's a more senior role. CIO, there's often conflicts. The CIO is there to deliver IT, and the CISO is there to some extent to do the same thing, but to deliver it in a secure manner. And there can be a lot of clashes or disagreements, which add to everybody's stress load.
I can only imagine. Like, it is, I guess you just have to be strategic, and it's just like any role, really. You really have to know what you're walking into. And we alluded to it previously, but one of the things that it can be challenging, one of the challenges can be getting the skill sets and having them on board. It's the numbers fluctuate so much with the global skills shortage in cybersecurity. From your experience on the market and from your oversights of different security teams and so on, like, what do you think is where do you think the biggest skill deficit lies in security?
My opinion, I think, is that the biggest skills shortage is in people that are able to work in either a SOC or a TOC at a very technical level. You can get people that have a year or a year or two, and they'll define themselves as a security analyst, but then you start delving into how deep their technical knowledge goes, and it's not at the level that you you need for somebody to do a kind of SOC or a TOC role. So I think that's where the biggest shortage is. I mean, the shortage is everywhere. As you said, the figures change. I think that last time I looked, they were predicting we were going to be 2 million short by the end of this year. I gave up looking because I just know that we're short of people.
Yeah,
So,
I know. Yeah, sometimes you just don't need the facts and figures. There's just a big shortage. There's some really good initiatives with upskilling people and transitioning their skill sets into cybersecurity. Fast tracking to IT is really good. They have a cybersecurity program, but then also there's a lot of businesses that are doing like initiatives and kind of apprenticeship programs to kind of skill people in different areas of cybersecurity. So that should hopefully bear some fruit in the next few years. But look, I've really enjoyed chatting with you. I've got one last question that we'll close this out on. But so obviously you've had such a long, you're having a long career in cybersecurity. It's not going to end anytime soon. If you could be remembered by one thing that you contributed to the cybersecurity community, what would it be and why?
One thing I really want to do is elevate the position of the Ciso so that it is seen more as a business functional role, and that security. I know I'm saying two things now, but the other thing is that security is not seen anymore as the roadblock. That's not what we're about. We're business people, the same as finance, the same as HR, and our role is to try and help the business accomplish its goals, and rather than being the people that just used to say no, we are now the people that used to say, that do say, well, no, we can't do it that way, but if we just change this, then we can do it that way, and we become more of an enabler than a roadblock.
It's a really good answer. Yeah, you for thinking on your toes. That was perfect. But Matt, thanks so much. It's been great catching up with you, and I really appreciate your time.
Thanks very much, John. Pleasure.
AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Alldus offer an exec search program. Alldus can help you discover how data science and AI can transform your company. With our unrivaled network of C-suite executives and senior AI professionals, we offer retained search services across the US and Europe. Get the Alldus advantage. Become a member of the Alldus community and enjoy some of the following: AI meetups. Once a month, our community gathers to listen to some of the leading experts in the world of data science and AI. Our speakers come from all over the world, including Dublin, Boston, and Frankfurt. We also have our AI mentors. Our experts will provide mentoring to Alldus members. And don't forget our AI in Action podcast. Each week we have guests from all over the world talking us through their education, career, and more. Become an Alldus member and get the Alldus advantage. For more information and to sign up for our newsletter, log on to www.alldus.com. That's www.alldus.com. Alldus International, empowering through AI.